Chapter 10 Until We Meet Again. As winter came, their routine was the same as it was every year. The chill in the air was the first sign. The boys packed their belongings and took down the tent before the last leaf fell from the secret tree. A few carriages were brought up to the grove to load their possessions as they begin their annual winter stay with Asgore and Toriel. Though the palace was still under construction, the grand ballroom had been finished on time for that year's Yuletide festival in Giftmas. As Dream and Nightmare got to their room, they found it to be freshly renovated, with all new curtains, sheets, and beautifully painted walls that depicted celestial bodies. Nightmare smiled, glad his brother was pleased with their new room. He knew the golden stars against the navy blues would impress Dream. He suggested it to Toriel. "A dress?" Nightmare asked, as they ate dinner that night with the king and queen. "Oh, can I?" Dream said, after having inquired about it to the goat monsters. "I've always wanted to wear one of those pretty ball gowns. This might be the only time I can. Otherwise, I'm just going to match Nightmare like I do every year." "What's wrong with matching?" Nightmare tilted his brow, taking another spoonful of his stew. Dream shrugged, about to answer his brother when Toriel spoke first. "I don't think that would be a problem. If Dream wants to wear a dress, I think that would be lovely. Asgore?" Asgore was distracted for a moment, looking over a letter beside him. What was that, dear?" Toriel narrowed her eyes as Dream stood slightly. "Can I wear a dress to the ball? Please, pretty please?" Oh, said the Monster King, a little flustered. "Maybe you should ask Toriel." "He did ask me." She pushed her mouth to the side. "Oh, that's a yes then, yes," said Dream, sitting back down. Nightmare rolled his eyes, continuing to eat his stew. Now this was going to be interesting. He'd forgotten the whole conversation until the night of the ball. That's when one of the maids brought in a grand yellow gown made especially for Dream, embroidered with tiny crystal beads. Nightmare didn't think he'd actually do it. He'd just gotten on his own formal wear, shoulder cape with a decorative hilt sword, when Dream started putting on the dress. "You're actually going to wear that?" He folded his arms. "Of course," said Dream, getting lost in the yards of yellow satin. "I just have to figure out how it goes on." Nightmare smirked, watching Dream struggle a moment before he finally came out the top. "There we go. Now... Oh, Nightmare, can you help me tie up the corset?" "Corset?" He walked over, trying to figure out the function of the dress as well. "Why do you need a corset? You don't have a waist." "It's the shape the dress, of course." Nightmare sighed, taking a few moments to figure out the laces, tying them up into bows. "There, shouldn't fall off you now." Dream looked in their full-length mirror, doing half-twirls to see how it moved. "How do I look?" He was serious about this, though Nightmare wasn't sure how to feel about it. He was in the mood to turn a few heads. "It's a beautiful dress. You look great." Dream gave him a grin. "Thanks." "You look like a giant bell. Ding dong." Nightmare made a mocking motion with his hand. "I do not look like a bell," Dream said, flustered. There was a knock at their door. "Sure do. Asgore's going to put you on top of the judgment hall before the end of the night. Ding dong." He joked again, falling backwards onto his bed. Dream went to answer the door before letting out a delightful gasp. "You made it!" A gaggle of 4 teenage girls, 2 humans and 2 monsters, a cat and crocodile, answered him in a variety of girlish quips. Nightmare sat up as the 4 of them flocked around Dream to observe his dress. "Dream, you can't invite girls into our room." "Why not? Besides, they're going to help me with my makeup," said Dream. "You're going to wear makeup too? Oh, brother." He covered his face as the girls giggled. Rolling back onto his feet, he headed to the door. "I'm going to get a drink." "You better not sneak any of the cider," Dream called after him. Yeah. That was exactly his intention, but no one was going to tell if he snuck a few sips. Passing busy servants and gossiping nobles, Nightmare slipped into the kitchen. He ducked under a large tray of hors d'oeuvres, being carried by a strong monster, gently gliding around the cooks and chefs. "Lord Nightmare, what are you doing in here?" the head chef Muffet huffed, 2 hands on her hips, while 4 more iced and powdered tiny sweets. "Just getting away from the chaos," he said, snatching up a champagne glass, eyeing the cellar entrance. "Away from it? It's chaos in here! Hey, don't you dare!" The spider monster blocked his way with a rolling pin. "If Queen Toriel knew what you were up to..." He leaned against the counter. "Miss Muffet, I have no intention of causing any trouble for you." "Good, because I got enough on my hands at the moment. Hey!" Nightmare popped one of the cherry tarts in his mouth before twirling back the way he came. "Fill your glass on some grape juice and get out of my web! Ugh!" she demanded, powdering her sweets even harder, sending up little white clouds. Nightmare chuckled, heading over to a cart with freshly squeezed juice to fill his glass. Sipping from his cup, he drifted over to the large windows, not exactly out of the kitchen chaos, but at least out of everyone's way. Even though the loud kitchen filled his skull with noise, just looking at the beautiful winter night made him feel calm. The snowfall was perfectly romantic, catching the light of the lanterns as it gently floated to the ground. Carriages lined up the front drive as visitors were arriving. Nightmare leaned against the frame, feeling the gentle chill from the glass hit his face. As he watched the carriages open one after another, there was one that caught his eye. It was a royal carriage, heavily ornate, but guarded on both sides by mounted troops. 2 women and 2 men stepped out onto the freshly brushed carpet so their clothes would not touch the snow. One of the men was tall, wearing a black cloak, a matching felt hat, and jet black hair. As if sensing Nightmare's gaze upon him, his pale face turned directly towards the skeleton in the window. A handsome young man, but those eyes were icy cold green that could freeze the soul. Nightmare felt a shiver down his spine, backing up into a woman carrying a pan of sauce. "Out!" Muffet shouted at him. "All right, I'm out," Nightmare said, heading for the door, but his thoughts lingered on the nobleman with those eerie green eyes. Heading back to the bedroom, he would be met in the hall by the crocodile girl. "There you are! Come and look at Dream!" she said, grabbing him by the hand and dragging him along. I know where my room is," he said, taking back his hand and heading to the open door. There, he'd meet Dream stepping out and somehow really looking different. He hadn't expected the makeup to soften his face as much as it did. Now with earrings and matching gloves, he looked just like a princess. Nightmare blinked and smirked. "Didn't know I had a sister." Dream giggled. "Well, you do tonight. Be a gentleman," said Dream, holding out his hand. "Yes, your majesty," he said dramatically, taking his brother's hand around his arm and heading to the ballroom properly. However, the closer they got, seeing the guests enter through the main hall ahead, he felt Dream getting nervous. You did mean it when you said I look nice, right? I don't look like a fool, do I?" Nightmare smiled at him. "You look fine, Dream. Just relax. You've been wanting to do this for weeks." "Yes, I suppose there's no going back now. Just don't make fun of me, please." "I won't make fun of you, at least not in front of anyone." "I can accept that." Gentle music filled the ballroom as the guests were introducing themselves and bringing in their gifts to the king and queen. Large crimson banners lined the length of the ballroom. A dozen crystal chandeliers hung above, illuminating the white marble in otherworldly splendor. The guests made their way down the red carpet. They take a bow where Asgore and Toriel stood in front of their thrones. Nightmare and Dream would make their way around the edge of the room, passing dozens of mirrors that made the space feel even more massive. Guests greeted the twins, Nightmare noticing how the monsters behaved as normal, but some of the humans gave strange looks at Dream, mumbling behind their backs. But Nightmare kept their pace, not wanting his brother to get caught up in whatever they were saying. They would head up to the stand beside Toriel, who beamed a smile, taking Dream's hands. "You look so lovely, my dear. How are you enjoying it?" "It feels really nice. I'm really having so much fun," said Dream. Nightmare wasn't expecting any compliments, though. He wore the same uniform from the year before. Now that they were 17, they wouldn't be expected to grow much more, leaving both of them only a little above 4 feet without heels. They were going to be mistaken as children forever, he thought to himself, sighing as his mind drifted off. Asgore and Toriel spoke to each of the guests as they approached, Nightmare barely paying attention, bowing when he heard Asgore say his name. "The princes and princesses of Rivaldo," is what Nightmare heard said by the servant. Bringing his attention to the 4 humans in front of them, they were lifting themselves from their bows. It was the man dressed in black, although Nightmare could see now that the satin of his sleeves had a green shimmer that matched his eyes. As his head rose, his gaze locked with Nightmare's. That ice-cold feeling filled the skeleton's chest as the man smiled. Even though he could hear Asgore and the other man speaking, none of the words came to him. His gaze remained locked with those unearthly green eyes. It felt like staring too long into the white sea, with a quiet voice tempting one to step into it. Nero, wasn't it? Said Toriel. It just so happens the twins are also 17. Nightmare felt the warmth of Dream's hand take his. He blinked, turning his eyes from the human before looking at Dream, his brows lowered in concern. Nightmare gave no indication of an answer, not while the young man stood there. When the four royals finally turned away to join the party, Nightmare swung his other hand over to hold Dream's. I'm all right, just a little dizzy. Your eyes are unfocused. I'm going to take you to sit down. Nightmare smirked in spite of himself. I'm all right. However, he let Dream take him to one of the tables in the corner by the stairs. He really was dizzier than he expected. As he sat, Dream felt his forehead and lifted his face to check his eyes again. I just need some water, I think, he said, glancing past him back at the guests. Are you sure? He cracked a smile. Yes, you worry too much. Fine, I'll get you some water, Dream said before heading towards the refreshments. Nightmare examined the crowd until he saw the man in black. He stood with 3 others who had come with him, all siblings with the same dark hair, but none of them had the icy green eyes as the fellow 17-year-old. The man smiled, greeting the other guests before inviting a human woman to dance. Dream came back with a glass of water, handing it to Nightmare. Thank you, he said, taking a sip. Lord Dream, you're looking marvelous, said a cat monster coming up to them with a bow, offering his hand. May I have this dance? Oh, I'm sorry, but... Dream started. Nightmare shook his head. Go on, have fun. I'll just be here. Dream smiled a little. Worried still filled his eyes. All right, just be careful, okay? Giving a nod, he watched his brother take the hand of the cat monster, moving to the dance floor. Closing his eyes a minute, Nightmare continued to sip from his glass. The music echoed against the high walls, and he could feel guests passing his table, paying him no mind. Eventually, he looked back out at the dance floor, feeling a moment of panic. The dark-haired prince was dancing with Dream, but it was only a moment before they switched partners. Why did he feel so uneasy about that man? They hadn't even shared a single word, and yet there was something primal in Nightmare that warned him about those eyes. A second more, and the dark-haired prince noticed Nightmare staring at him and started to head over. The skeleton straightened his back, looking away, pretending to be distracted by anything else as the human approached. Well now, he said, hand on the table, shifting his weight on his hips. We seem to be rather curious about each other, I presume. Nightmare finally looked at him again. The human gave an earnest smile with a little bow. I'm Prince Nero. We were introduced earlier, but you seem to be under the weather. I'm just a little tired. I didn't sleep well, said Nightmare, rubbing his right socket, which felt to slightly sting. Restless nights? I know how that feels. Do you mind if I join you? He said, motioning to the seat beside Nightmare. He didn't want to be rude, and at the same time, Nightmare didn't have any real reason to deny the man's company. He gave a nod, watching how Nero gracefully sat, crossing his legs. Your sister seems to be a lovely young woman. Huh? Oh, no, that's my brother. That seemed to catch the man off guard, his eyes widening as he stumbled over his next word. Your brother? He looked over his shoulder to spy Dream in the crowd. Huh, I would have never guessed. Forgive me, I'm still new to understanding the customs of monsters. How do you tell? You don't. He just wanted to dress that way. Monsters didn't originally have a concept of gender. It was adopted from human culture centuries ago. It came along with speaking your language. Any one of us can have children between each other using our innate magic, so there isn't really much need to apply gender to a species that doesn't reproduce biologically. Nightmare realized he sounded like a textbook just then, so tried not to utter another word. Ah, that makes more sense, Nero said, smiling back at him. In any case, maybe you should try wearing a dress as well. I think I wouldn't pass up such an opportunity. Nightmare folded his arms, pushing his back against the seat. No thanks. I'd rather not people see me that way. What way is that? Nero tilted his head. Well, it's someone needing protecting. I'm not saying that's what Dream thinks of himself, it's just... You don't want to be seen as weak. Right, Nightmare nodded. I don't see a problem with that. You seem like an individual who's strong in mind and in spirit, and rather well learned. Of course, Toriel and Asgore treat us as though we're their own. We're both educated, but I do enjoy the art of learning for its own sake. I can tell. His grin widened. I bet you could teach me a few things, probably better than my tutors could. So then, Toriel and Asgore may treat you as their own, but you're not, right? You're not in line to the throne. Nightmare shook his head. No, nor am I interested. Doesn't really work that way around here. I see. It's not too dissimilar to my own situation. I'm the third son of my father. The eldest is soon to be married by next summer, so there's no chance that I'll be seeing Ascension in my lifetime. But he leaned back, relaxing his legs. That's something I've known all my life, something I've never had to worry about happening. At most, I may marry a nice noblewoman and inherit a county to lord over. Feeling more relaxed, Nightmare finished off his glass of water. I can't imagine even the pressure of that. I don't have to marry anyone. I'm a tree guardian, immortal. It will always be me and Dream keeping watch over the sacred tree. I see. You don't have to marry, but you still could, couldn't you? You're not under any oath not to. Nightmare shook his head. No, there's no rule saying we can't. I just can't imagine it for either of us. We have friends, but I don't think... He paused a moment to find the words. We know of the concept of romantic love, but I don't think either of us have ever experienced it. Then again, unlike many folks, there isn't any pressure for us to join our lives to anyone else. I see. So what I'm hearing is that you've never fallen in love, Nero said, putting his hand to his chin. No, not really. I'm still young, though. Why, have you fallen in love before, Prince Nero? Nightmare eased his arms to his lap. We can drop the formalities, just Nero will do, and I can call you Nightmare? Of course, he nodded. In all honesty, I find myself attracted to attractive people. Man or woman makes no difference. Beauty is the same regardless of its expression. Nightmare smirked a little. Beauty isn't love. No, but it certainly helps. I don't think I could fall in love with someone just because they're beautiful. Nightmare shook his head. I need something deeper than that. Deeper how? Well, I suppose if I were trying to find a partner, I'd seek someone who is intellectually minded, someone who'd educate me as much as I could educate them. I like the way you think. I suppose if I sought such qualities, it would help me narrow my prospects, said Nero, glancing back at the crowd. Though I think it's better that I focus on my education. It's said that the human mind slows down with age. I should learn everything I can while I'm young. Sounds like a plan. What are you studying? Currently, I'm learning magic. Seems I was born with an excess of magical talent, so my father seems to think I'd make a good court mage. Oh. Nightmare sat up straight before leaning forward. I've been wanting to study more magic lately. I was gifted a textbook on basic ritual magic this spring, and I've nearly broken the spine studying it. Nero's grin curled in delight. You should come to Rivaldo then. The best mages on the continent study at our university. Though I get private tutelage from the professors for my own studies. Perhaps I could set you up with the same arrangement. Really? You'd do that for me? Nightmare said. He felt his ribs swell, the idea of leaving home to study in a distant land. Part of him had wished he could, feeling some jealousy when Chris had gone off to university. If you'd really like to, I can inquire about it to my father. I'm sure you'd be a welcome guest, being a monster of such high esteem. Yes, it would. It would be an honor, Nightmare nodded. But, glancing back at his brother and catching sight of Toriel and Asgore sharing a dance, he wondered. He had never asked about going away before, especially not going away somewhere without his brother. I, too, will need to inquire of the king and queen, and my brother. Nightmare hung his head. Understandable, Nero said, giving a gentle slap at the back of his gloved hand to Nightmare's knee. He leaned in with a hushed voice. I think you and I are going to make good friends. Friends? Nightmare hung on that word a moment. He wasn't looking to make a friend, but now that he heard Nero say it, he knew he desired it too. Yes, I think so, he smiled. Despite not dancing once, Nightmare had a great night at the ball. Sticking by Nero's side, the human prince introduced him to his 3 other siblings. They were more pleasant than he expected and seemed receptive of the idea of hosting Nightmare so he could study in the city. He didn't know why, but he suddenly felt attached to Nero, like a shadow longing to be a reflection. Even though they were the same age, the human seemed far more confident in conversation and drawing others to him. Those he met became eager to please him, such as offering to bring him drinks or food or growing curious of his affairs. It was different from the way people wanted to please Dream or even himself. People always wanted something from him and his brother, the golden apples, of course. But for Nero, it felt as though people wanted him for his own sake. Nightmare feared he might be doing the same, drawn into Nero's charm, a nuisance simply eager for his company. "Why don't you bring some cider for Nightmare as well?" Nero inquired. "Oh, no, I'm too young to drink it." Nightmare shook his head. "Too young to drink it? What madness is that?" I'm too young? Don't you prevent folks from drinking till they're 18? 18? Goodness, no! I've had wine in my meals for as long as I can remember." That was a culture shock, and Nightmare was expecting many more the longer he spent in the human's company. But Nero always seemed to include him in the conversation, never letting anyone ignore him. He wasn't a nuisance after all. Nero genuinely wanted him to be his friend, he thought. Their conversations, musings, and many jokes would continue on for hours, taking up the whole night. As the party began to tire, Nero's siblings insisted on turning in to their rooms for the night. Dream would also ask Nightmare if he was ready for bed, but Nightmare insisted he wasn't tired, staying up with Nero as their conversation continued in the drawing room. "It's so late," said Nightmare, finally yawning. The hours struck 4 in the morning as he laid down on the sofa where he sat. "I think you mean it's so early," said Nero, who was sitting on the floor, leaning against the sofa, his eyes heavy and threatening to shut. "That's even worse. I don't want to stop talking to you. There's so little time left." Nightmare closed his eyes. "Well, good news for you. We'll be in the city for the next 2 weeks. The trip from Rivaldo is long, so we figured we'd enjoy the city while we were here." "Really?" Nightmare's eyes shot up as he sat up, leaning closer to his friend. "Oh gods, there's so much I can show you. I know all the best places to eat and hang out." Nero gave a cheeky grin. "I knew you would. I just hadn't got around to asking. God, we got caught up in so many things. What all did we talk about? Our families, theoretical magic, the ocean trading companies, sword fighting, different ways of fermenting fruit." Nightmare laid back down. "I think we were talking about metalsmithing for a bit there. It led to talking about how gold values can change." "Heh, you're simply the most delightful person to talk to, that's for certain." Nightmare blushed, clutching his hands together on his waist. "Really? I don't think I've talked to anyone this long before, not even Dream." Nero's green eyes glanced over at him again, which felt less cold in the firelight and when framed by tired lids. "I think it's because we understand each other more than anyone ever will. I feel as though I never wish to be parted from you." The violet flush across his cheekbones grew deeper. He turned on his side to face the back of the sofa. "Don't say it like that. It sounds like you're going to propose to marry me or something." Nero laughed. "Sorry, I can't help it. It's just how I feel," he said, his eyes finally closing shut. "My most beloved friend." Lacking the energy to even stay flustered, Nightmare passed out, the servants leaving both young men be as they had been instructed. Once morning came, the servants were compelled to wake them for breakfast. Both teenagers had heavy bags under their eyes, shuffling off to the dining hall where Asgore and Toriel had invited the rest of Nero's siblings to dine. Dream had gotten his sleep, looking refreshed with black trousers and a warm sweater. His eyes widened when he saw Nightmare step in with Nero, taking a seat next to his brother. "Where were you? Were you awake all night?" Nightmare yawned, still wearing his uniform from the ball. "Pretty much." "Forgive us, your royal highnesses," said Nero, taking a seat with his siblings across from Nightmare. "The guardian and I couldn't get enough of each other's company." "Oh, that's quite all right," Asgore chuckled. "It's good to see you both getting along." "Really wish I had some of that coffee right now." Nightmare rubbed his skull tiredly. As Muffet served their tea and the other servants put down their plates, Nightmare heard one of Nero's siblings say something about Edenfall just being like a fairy tale kingdom from a storybook. "I'm so delighted that you're enjoying yourselves," said Asgore. "Nightmare has promised to show us around the city during our stay," Nero chimed in. "Should everything go well, which I'm sure it will, I'd love to bring him to visit our home in Rivaldo as well." Before getting his first bite, Nightmare looked at Nero, grinning back at him before turning to the goat monsters. "Could I? Would you allow it?" "Oh, that would be quite the trip." Toriel put a hand to her cheek. "Would Dream be all right being that far away from the tree for so long?" "Not Dream, just me," Nightmare corrected. Dream turned to his brother with stunned silence. It did sound crazy. The idea that Nightmare would go anywhere without his twin. "The Guardian has as much hunger for knowledge as I do. I really insist. There would be so much we could teach him," said Nero. "Teach? Then you mean for him to stay in Rivaldo and study?" Asgore asked. "He is a very interesting young man," said one of the sisters. "I think we'd be delighted in his company in our home." "This feels very sudden. Toriel, what do you think of this?" the king asked his queen. "I'm not completely against the idea, should Nightmare truly desire it, but I think he should save some time to think about it. In a year he'll be 18 and well in his right to choose his future path." Nightmare felt a smile grow on his face until Dream stood from his chair. "Excuse me, I've lost my appetite." A silence infected the room as they watched Dream swiftly depart. Nightmare exchanged glances with the others before standing as well. "I'll be right back," he said before following his twin. "Dream! Dream, wait!" Nightmare called out. His brother half ran to their room, slipping inside. Nightmare entered the room as Dream went to stand by the window, his hands clutching his arms. Shaking his head, Nightmare held up his hands. "Why are you acting this way? I thought you'd be happy for me." "I am happy. It's fine." But Dream's voice shook as though they were on the edge of tears. "It's not fine. You don't sound happy at all." "How could I be?" Dream turned to him. We always promised each other if you left, we'd travel together. Both of us. And you just want to go away with some guy you just met last night? You told Asgore you wanted to go without me." "I didn't think you'd be interested, Dream. I'm not going on an adventure. I want to go to Rivaldo to study magic. Studying has never been your thing, so I didn't think you'd want to go." "And you didn't think to talk to me about it first? That I wouldn't be upset? I've never been anywhere without you before." Nightmare folded his arms. "That's not true. You're always hanging out with your new friends. I think you're jealous that I might finally have a friend of my own, and this one isn't one of yours." "I'm not jealous! Nightmare, I'm worried! We don't know who these people are." "They're the royalty of Rivaldo. Isn't that enough?" Dream paused, covering his mouth as he looked away. Nightmare stepped closer. "What is it? What's wrong?" "We're fighting. We've never fought before." "We're not fighting. You're just not listening to me." Dream wiped his own tears, taking a breath and looking back at his twin. "I lied. I am jealous. I can't imagine you being so far away for so long. How long will you be away?" I don't know. I didn't get that far in discussing it with Nero yet." Nightmare looked down, starting to feel ashamed. "And I'm sorry I didn't talk to you first. I should have realized it would have been hard on you." Dream took another breath before Nightmare opened his arms, offering a hug. He accepted as the twins embraced. "Is this really what you want?" Dream asked before looking at him. Nightmare smiled and nodded. "I want to become stronger, to protect you and the tree. I want to live in a place different from this one so I can figure out who I am other than just being a tree guardian." Dream hung his head, but put a smile on his face. "I did tell you that if you ever wanted something, you should ask. I would never wish to keep you from finding your happiness." Nightmare's sockets widened. "So then it's all right. I have your blessing?" "I agree with Toriel that you should wait a while, at least until our next birthday. It'll give my heart time to prepare for your departure." "Really? Thank you! Thank you, Dream!" He laughed in delight, hugging his brother and twirling him around. Dream was surprised but smiled, gladdened to see his brother happy. Over the next 2 weeks, Nightmare would spend nearly every day with Nero or his family, showing them around the city. However, he primarily valued spending time with Nero. He couldn't help but feel the human thought the same way he did about so many things. The path to the tree wasn't as guarded as it normally was in season. Still, it wasn't an issue for Nightmare to show Nero up to the tree. They had to put in some effort to trudge through the snow, but it still made it to the top without issue. It was a little strange to see their tree without any leaves or fruit, but it also seemed very peaceful, knowing the tree was in a deep sleep. "What's that, out there? I can't see anything," said Nero, putting up a gloved hand, shielding his eyes. "That's the White Sea. The endless everything is what the monsters call it. The edge of the world. Anyone who steps into it never returns." "Huh. You can hardly tell where it starts with the snow on the ground." "Yeah, no one really knows what it is, but it's always there." "And truly, nothing's ever come out of it?" Nightmare shook his head. Picking up a frozen branch, the human tossed it into the white. Instead of slipping into it like one would expect from the snow, it slid across it like a marble floor. The stick slowly came to rest before fading into the blank space. "Ever think of throwing someone in there?" Nero smirked. Nightmare blinked. No? Why would anyone do that?" "You know, to punish criminals. I wonder if it hurts, disappearing like that." The thought of it put a chill down his spine. "We don't believe in using capital punishment," he said, but he was also wondering if disappearing like that would hurt. "You must be very lucky then," said Nero, putting his hand behind his head. "No criminals that need to be put to death. Wouldn't that be a first?" Nightmare turned his eyes up to him. "Is that what it's like in Rivaldo?" "Yeah, unfortunately there's a lot of bad people in the world. Too many to keep track of. Sometimes you just have to get rid of them." The Guardian shook his head. "I don't want to think about that. That's far too gruesome." Well, you're going to have to think about it eventually. That's just the real world. You should bring me around in the springtime. I'd like to see the tree in its full glory." Part of him wanted to rebuke Nero's first comment. He had seen terrible things before. He knew about the dangers of the world, at least he thought he did. But he didn't want to create any tension between them. "Sure, I'll bring you here to see it one day." When it was time for Nero and his family to leave, both boys promised to write to each other until Nightmare could fully visit again. He stood on the steps of the palace, waving and watching until their caravan disappeared into the city. Nero's first letter would arrive just as the chill of the air finally broke. Dream and Nightmare were spending a lazy February afternoon in their rooms. Nightmare was deep in a textbook about advanced magic, while Dream looked over a collection of papers and signs that were being published around the city. A knock at the door, Nightmare answered it to be handed a letter by the butler. "Dream, it's from Nero! He actually wrote back!" His twin looked up, giving a cautious smile. "Really? Seems like the day after he was gone you were already writing to him." Leaping back into his bed, Nightmare tore open the envelope and started ravenously consuming his friend's words. They described more details of the city and the palace that he lived in. How it was different because of how old it was, unlike Nightmare's home. Dream watched him a long moment, only looking away once Nightmare noticed. "What?" Dream smiled, shaking his head. "You're hardly so excited about anything. I'm glad." Not wanting to spur up any tender emotions, Nightmare accepted his brother's words and read the letter over and over. He kept it by his bedside, so he might read it again later. When spring finally arrived, the new leaves and blossoms appeared on the tree. Dream and Nightmare returned to their tent beside it. Nightmare couldn't stop thinking about what life in Rivaldo was like, daydreaming about it in between nearly every interaction. Drunk on the thoughts of it, he barely noticed Dream's heart breaking, watching him drift away even though they were still together. Their training with the Undying continued, as Asgore wanted him to have his skills about him when he went to live with the humans. Casilda would also visit them to see how far they had come along in learning from her magic books. It was a spring morning shortly after their 18th birthday. Dream gave Casilda a demonstration of the ritual magic he'd been practicing. It caught Nightmare off guard, as he hadn't realized Dream had been studying this whole time. Using an elixir he'd made himself from the golden apples, Dream was able to draw several magic circles, one for a circle of calm, one for a circle of hope, and finally, a circle of guidance. Casilda tested the circles with him and clapped at his achievement. "Very fitting! These spells will serve you well in your duties." He hadn't heard of such spells until he realized Dream had invented them himself. Even he was impressed with his brother's secret talent. Still, Nightmare felt he had to go to the human city to learn magic, but really, he just wanted to be close to Nero again. Not wanting to wait until winter, Nightmare begged Toriel to let him travel in autumn. He could tell even the Queen didn't want to see him go. Very well. I will inform Asgore that you wish to depart, but we have decided it would be best if you take 2 of the royal guards with you for your protection. Nightmare wanted to complain, but no, that was probably for the best. Finally, the night came before Nightmare's departure. Everything for him was packed and ready to go. He could hardly sleep. Though he closed his eyes to get rest, he told himself he could always sleep in the carriage on the way. It would take a month to reach the city, so he didn't need to worry too much. However, in the night, he woke and rolled over to see Dream in his cot. He was wide awake, just staring at the top of the tent, his eyelids glowing in the darkness. Dream? What time is it? Nightmare groaned. Sometime past midnight. Reaching over, Nightmare grabbed Dream's hand and held it. Are you thinking about me leaving? Of course, there's no more time left between us. I won't be gone forever, you know that, right? Dream didn't answer. Nightmare opened his eyes again and scooted closer. Hey. Finally, Dream brought his gaze to him. I'm gonna be okay. Once I get good at magic, I'll be right back home. Promise? Nightmare smiled. Promise. Dream leaned to the Nightmare as his brother brought him into a hug. They fell asleep like that, like they used to when they were younger. In the morning, a somber silence held them as they got dressed and ate breakfast. Just as Dream gathered their plates, the carriage arrived. Out from the carriage came Asgore and Toriel along with 2 others, a female bluebird monster who Nightmare recognized, and a white dog fitted with plate armor. Lieutenant Martlet reporting for duty. I'll be your beck and call for the duration of the trip to Rivaldo, she said. The dog next to her gave a happy yelp before panting and wagging its tail. Martlet? Said Nightmare. He knew her as Bert Lee's slightly older cousin. They'd even played together at times when they were younger. Her eyes were wide and bright, as if ready for adventure. Yes, sir! It'll be an honor to serve you on your mission for education! Right, you and... Nightmare looked down at the small, fluffy creature. Dog. The dog gave another happy bark, its front paws patting the ground, as if begging for pets. After many interviews, I believe these 2 will best serve you and keep you safe while you're away, said Asgore with a wide grin. Nightmare felt baffled, but it's a dog. Did an actual dog apply to be a guard? How did that happen? Before he could ask any more questions, Toriel stepped forward. I made sure to pack plenty of good meals that should last you the trip, and I knitted you some gloves and a scarf. And I know you already have those things, but some extra warmth should do you good. There's a few things in the carriage that... Toriel, hey, it's okay, he said, taking her worried hands. I'm gonna be fine. She smiled, tears in her eyes as she hugged him. You're all grown up now. Oh, Nightmare, I'm so proud of you. I know, he said, first patting her back, but then gently returning the hug. Something felt off, like there was something final about all this. Even though he was sure he'd see them again, it felt as though he would never return to this version of his family. Asgore gave him a big dad hug as Martlin the dog packed his bags into the carriage. Once freed from the giant fluffy arms, he turned to look at Dream standing behind him. His golden eyelights were cast down as he held up a small decorative box. This is a gift for the King of Rivaldo. See to it that he receives it from you personally. Oh, sure, said Nightmare, tentatively taking it. He stared at it a moment, already knowing what was inside. Dream, I'm gonna miss you. Finally, his brother looked him in the eyes. The edge of his sockets grew red, the tears barely holding back. This place will always be your home. I'll be thinking of you every day until you return. Nightmare put his arms around Dream, both of them hugging tightly for as long as they could. He felt Dream's tears meet his shoulder. You'll always be my brother. Of course, nothing will ever change that. Free of Dream's arms, he used his cape to wipe his brother's face. Dream chuckled softly, as if it were the last drop of their childhood slipping away. Stealing his nerves, Nightmare held back his own tears. Until we meet again. Until we meet again, Dream repeated. A moment later, Martley would take Nightmare's hand, helping him into the carriage. Asgore and Toriel both put an arm around Dream, the three of them waving at his departure. Nightmare waved back, but continued to lean out the window until the trees obscured where they stood. Still, he continued to look a moment more, as if anticipating Dream would come running after them any minute. But he didn't. Nightmare was on his way, for the first time, somewhere without his twin. With a deep breath, he sat back in his seat. Then his shoulders stiffened. Martlet was staring at him with a huge smile on her beak. So exciting, isn't it? We're going to be staying with the humans. Oh, Lord Nightmare, I bet you got a shiver in your bones. I can't wait to see what their kingdom is like. Oh, yeah, of course. The dog guard could take it no longer, hopping from the seat next to the bird woman into his lap, begging for pets. Nightmare laughed, though he thought it was a little irritating. He didn't show it. He'd pet the dog until it was satisfied. I think the real reason Asgore chose you two was to keep me company. Oh, I'm sure it was, sir, but we can both defend you from harm, I assure you, Martlet chirped. Martlet, you can drop the formalities. We know each other, remember? Oh, yes, of course, she said, rubbing her beak with a pink flush on her face. Onward the carriage rode through familiar streets. Nightmare recalled watching it all be built throughout his childhood. The further it traveled, the less familiar the buildings looked. Once they were about 40 minutes away from the tree, the buildings were more sparse until they reached the edge of town. A checkpoint of royal guards only stopped them for a second before seeing Nightmare and waving them on through. 10 minutes more, the only thing beyond the windows was a sea of trees. The wagon rocked with ruggedness as there was no longer a paved street under them. The distance from the tree could already be felt. His whole life, he never realized how sweet his home smelled. The air was always filled with the smell of apple blossoms. But the scent was gone now. In its place was the smell of dry leaves, cold mud, and the horses that pulled them ahead.